Daniel Hart was the admired drama teacher everyone trusted, but Mia Jacobs, the quiet new student, would be the one to pull back the curtain and expose a nightmare no one at Oakridge High ever expected. At Oakridge High, Daniel Hart was the kind of teacher people remembered long after graduation. He had a flair that made him different from the rest of the faculty. His classroom was decorated with theatrical props, masks, and dramatic posters from classic plays and horror films. Students loved the way he transformed ordinary lessons into performances. He encouraged creativity and convinced even the shyest students to step onto the stage. Parents admired him because he seemed committed to helping kids build confidence. When the school announced new theater productions, tickets sold out quickly, and Hart was always praised for his artistic vision. To outsiders, he looked like a teacher who gave everything to his students and the arts. Yet beneath the applause and the admiration, small things raised quiet doubts. Some parents noticed how often Hart scheduled late-night rehearsals, sometimes stretching until midnight. He explained it away by saying the productions demanded perfection. Students often mentioned that he invited select cast members to his home for extra practice sessions. He had a way of making these invitations seem like special honors. Those who were chosen felt lucky, while those who were left out believed they had missed an opportunity. No one thought to question why private rehearsals were even necessary. Teachers occasionally joked about Hart's obsession with costumes, especially the collection of masks he kept in his office. He claimed they were props for future shows, though some looked too strange to belong in any school production. Despite these odd details, Hart's charm kept suspicion at bay. He had a calm voice that made people feel at ease. Whenever a parent raised a concern, he would explain with such confidence that the worry dissolved. His talent for putting others at ease was part of what made him so trusted. Even the principal overlooked irregularities, convinced that Hart's unconventional style was simply part of his artistic personality. Over the years, he became one of the most respected staff members. Students dreamed of joining his plays, believing it would give them recognition and prestige. Parents even requested that their children be placed in his classes because they wanted them to learn from a teacher who could inspire. Rumors, however, never fully disappeared. Every few years, a story would circulate about strange parties, unusual assignments, or after-hours meetings that went beyond normal theater activities. Some students whispered about masks, dim lights, and things that felt unsettling. Others laughed it off as exaggerated teenage gossip. Since no one could prove anything, the rumors would fade, leaving only shadows of unease. Hart remained untouchable, protected by his reputation and his students' loyalty. He cultivated an image of a mentor who pushed boundaries in the name of art, and many believed in him wholeheartedly. For the students who adored him, Hart represented possibility and excitement. For the parents who trusted him, he seemed to offer safety and opportunity. Oakridge High's drama program thrived under his direction, and few dared to imagine that anything sinister could hide behind the curtains. The stage lights shone brightly, and Hart stood at the center of it all, admired by nearly everyone who crossed his path. The quiet whispers remained in the background, waiting for someone bold enough to listen. When Mia Jacobs first walked into Oakridge High, she stood out as the quiet new girl. She had transferred from another district halfway through the year, and the adjustment wasn't easy. Most students already had their circles, and breaking into them felt impossible. The only place she found a sense of belonging was the theater program. She had always loved acting, and joining the drama club felt like a way to escape the discomfort of being new. Daniel Hart noticed her almost immediately. He praised her talent during auditions and gave her a role in the upcoming production. For Mia, it felt like an honor, but soon she realized that his attention was not like the encouragement he gave others. It carried a strange weight, as though he was watching her more closely than anyone else. Mia tried to ignore her unease and focused on rehearsals, but she couldn't shake the feeling that something about the theater group was different from anything she had experienced before. The students spoke in hushed tones about gatherings outside of school. They never mentioned them directly in front of teachers or outsiders, but Mia caught fragments of conversations, references to masks, dim rooms, and late nights at Hart's house. At first, she thought they were exaggerating, trying to sound mysterious. Then came the night Hart invited her to one of these gatherings. He called it a rehearsal exercise, meant only for the most committed students. He emphasized that it was an honor to be chosen. She hesitated, but eventually agreed, hoping it would help her feel accepted. When she arrived, she immediately noticed the atmosphere was unsettling. The house was dimly lit, and the living room was rearranged with curtains covering the windows. Several students were already there, each wearing a scream mask. They moved quietly, as if rehearsing without words. Hart instructed them to perform movements and gestures as part of what he described as a trust exercise. Mia went along at first, but the longer she stayed, the stranger it became. The masks made everyone look faceless and anonymous, and the way Hart directed the group felt more like control than teaching. She left that night shaken, unable to explain why it disturbed her so deeply. As the material surfaced, more former students began to come forward. Some spoke hesitantly, as though afraid of being judged, while others carried a tone of relief as if unburdening themselves after years of silence. They described invitations that felt flattering at first, followed by gatherings that grew increasingly secretive. Each recalled the scream masks, the dim rooms, and the way Hart insisted the activities were part of becoming a true actor. Many admitted they stayed silent because they feared losing their roles in his productions. Hart's power over the drama program had made him untouchable, and anyone who resisted risked being excluded from the one place where they felt they belonged. The deeper the investigation went, the more it became clear that Hart had been running a hidden world beneath the school's nose. His ability to manipulate perception was striking. Parents believed their children were receiving opportunities. Administrators believed his unusual style was part of his brilliance. Students believed they were lucky to be chosen. But behind it all was a carefully maintained illusion. Investigators pieced together testimonies, evidence, and years of overlooked warning signs, building a case that stretched beyond scandal and into something criminal. The image of a beloved teacher was falling apart, replaced by a portrait of control, deception, and obsession, carefully masked under the glow of the stage lights. As the trial date approached, the story of Daniel Hart spiraled far beyond the boundaries of Oakridge High. Media outlets across the country covered the scandal, each new headline more sensational than the last. Parents who once praised him now appeared on television, horrified that they had ever trusted him with their children. Students who had defended him in the beginning withdrew their support, shaken by the mounting evidence. Yet the case was not just about masks and disturbing gatherings anymore. Mia Jacobs, the student who had first spoken up, brought forward one final revelation that changed everything. She revealed that her reason for recognizing the strangeness of Hart's gatherings was not merely intuition. Years earlier, her cousin, a former student at Oakridge, had been part of Hart's theater group. That cousin had disappeared after high school under vague circumstances. Police had ruled it a runaway case at the time, claiming there was no sign of foul play. Mia explained that her family had never accepted that conclusion, and she herself had grown up haunted by the unanswered questions. When she saw Hart's world up close, she felt an immediate connection between his secrets and her cousin's absence. Investigators reopened the missing person case with fresh urgency. They reviewed old files, retraced the steps of her cousin's last days, and cross-referenced them with Hart's movements. Records revealed that Hart had been one of the last adults to see the student before the disappearance. Further searches uncovered writings and journals in Hart's possession that included references to specific students, coded descriptions of gatherings, and cryptic notes that hinted at control, fear, and silence. While none of it directly proved what had happened to Mia's cousin, it painted a chilling picture that the events stretched back further than anyone had imagined. the courtroom filled with tension when these revelations were presented. Prosecutors framed Hart not only as a manipulative teacher, but as someone who had perfected his methods over time, covering his tracks carefully while maintaining a reputation that shielded him from suspicion. Witness after witness described years of secrecy and strange rituals, their voices breaking as they admitted how long they had stayed silent. The jury listened closely, their faces a mix of disbelief and horror. For Mia, the trial was not only about. The following days at school, Mia tried to talk to a few classmates about what she had seen. Most brushed it off, telling her that it was just part of Hart's style and that she was overthinking it. Some even laughed, suggesting she didn't understand his methods because she was new. But Mia couldn't let it go. The gathering had been too strange, too deliberate. The turning point came when one of Mia's classmates accidentally left a phone behind after one of the gatherings. The device made its way into the wrong hands, and soon the contents spilled into the open. On it were several photos, dim and grainy, but clear enough to stir panic. Students were captured wearing scream masks, standing in Hart's living room, their bodies posed in ways that looked far too deliberate. The images didn't resemble theater rehearsals or artistic experiments. They looked secretive, almost ritualistic. In the background of one photo, a tall figure stood partly in shadow. The face was blurred, but the outline resembled Hart's. That single image was enough to ignite suspicion in places where before there had only been whispers. The photos spread quickly across the school. Within hours, they were circulating on group chats and social media pages, sparking outrage and confusion. Some dismissed them as a prank, claiming students had staged the pictures themselves. Others insisted they proved what had long been rumored, that something dark was happening behind closed doors. Parents began calling the school office, demanding to know why their children were at a teacher's house late at night wearing masks. The administration scrambled to control the fallout, releasing a statement that the images were taken out of context and connected to an advanced theater project. But the explanation only raised more questions, and the scandal refused to die down. Investigators were eventually forced to step in. Detectives visited the school, spoke with students, and attempted to piece together what the gatherings really were. Hart himself was calm when questioned. He told authorities that the masks were props and that the sessions were experimental rehearsals exploring fear, silence, and identity. He spoke with such confidence that some parents almost believed him. His ability to turn suspicion into misunderstanding had worked for years, and now he tried to apply the same charm to the investigation. But this time, the images made it harder to dismiss the allegations outright. Mia's claims suddenly carried more weight. She had been the first to speak openly about what she had seen, and now the leaked photos supported her story. Students who had previously laughed at her unease began looking at her differently. For the first time, the possibility that Hart's activities weren't innocent made its way into serious conversation. Teachers, once quick to defend him, grew quieter. Parents began pulling their children from the drama program, fearing what else might be revealed. The pressure on Hart grew, but he maintained his composure. He insisted that the scandal was the result of jealousy, exaggeration, and misunderstanding. He continued teaching as though nothing had happened, even as reporters began appearing at the school gates and police cars were spotted in the parking lot. Investigators began pulling apart the life of Daniel Hart piece by piece, determined to separate fact from performance. What they found beneath the polished surface of the respected teacher revealed a pattern of secrecy that stretched back years. It started with the receipts, long orders of costumes, mostly masks, purchased under his own name but never used in any of the school's productions. Dozens of masks were stored in boxes in his home, some still sealed in their plastic, others worn down as though handled again and again. Alongside them were costumes of a darker nature, not suitable for any play the school had ever staged. When questioned, Hart insisted they were for personal projects, but the explanation rang hollow. The next discovery came from bank records. Investigators noticed irregular withdrawals, large sums of cash taken out at odd intervals. When asked about it, Hart claimed he was paying for supplies in bulk, but there was no record of these items ever reaching the school. Instead, the trail led to anonymous rental spaces on the outskirts of town. Inside one of these units, investigators found props, lighting equipment, and an assortment of unsettling videos labeled as student experiments. The recordings were nothing like rehearsals. They showed students, masked and silent, following Hart's direction in scenes that grew darker with each passing moment. The footage blurred the line between art and something more disturbing. It was undeniable proof that his gatherings were not simply theatrical exercises.